Block 1. The Hook. The world had dissolved into a roaring brown chaos. Churning, muddy water, thick with uprooted debris, surged through the gully, a monster of nature's own making. At its heart, on a rapidly disintegrating island of earth no bigger than a dinner plate, two tiny bunnies huddled together. They were impossibly small against the flood's fury, their fur matted and dark with spray, their bodies racked with violent tremors that had nothing to do with the cold. Their panicked squeaks were a fragile, desperate sound, swallowed almost instantly by the deafening roar of the current. They felt the vibrations of their dissolving sanctuary through their paws, a constant reminder that their world was literally crumbling away beneath them, second by agonizing second. Their instincts screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to go. On the stable bank, a figure of absolute power watched the scene unfold. Zala, the lioness, was as still as a golden statue carved from the very rock of the savannah. The rain had plastered her magnificent mane to her powerful neck, and droplets of water clung to her whiskers, but she did not move. Her immense amber eyes were fixed on the two terrified creatures, her gaze an unreadable mixture of focus and deep, profound stillness. Inside her powerful chest, her heart beat a steady, rhythmic drum, a stark contrast to the frantic, terrified heartbeats across the water. She was the apex predator, the embodiment of the wild's brutal efficiency. Yet the emotion reflected in her eyes was not hunger. It was something far more ancient and complex. A large chunk of their earthen refuge suddenly gave way, collapsing into the torrent with a sickening splash that sent a wave of icy water over the bunnies' paws. One of them let out a piercing shriek of pure terror, a sound that cut through the flood's roar for just a moment. They scrambled backward, their tiny claws digging uselessly into the mud, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. They were now trapped on a sliver of land that was visibly shrinking, the relentless water licking at its edges, patiently waiting to claim them. From her vantage point, Zala saw it all with a hunter's clarity. She saw the weakness, the vulnerability, the inevitability of their fate. A subtle ripple of muscle passed through her shoulders, the only outward sign of the internal conflict raging within her. The two bunnies, sensing the end was near, pressed their trembling bodies together in a final, desperate act of shared existence. The water now swirled around their feet, a frigid, inescapable grip. They had stopped squeaking, their terror replaced by a stunned, silent resignation. For Zala, the entire chaotic world narrowed to this single, heartbreaking tableau of impending loss. The roiling water, the darkening sky, the scent of wet earth. It all faded into the background, a deep, guttural sound. More a sigh than a growl rumbled in her chest. The laws of the savannah were simple and brutal, but what was stirring inside her was anything but. The decision she was about to make would challenge the very nature of her existence. But to understand what was about to happen, we must go back. Hours earlier, the sun was a merciless eye over the cracked savannah earth. Zala lay beneath a skeletal acacia tree, but her rest was heavy, haunted by a profound emptiness. The phantom cries of the cub she'd lost to a sudden sickness echoed in the silence of her heart, wrapping her in a thick shroud of apathy. The world had lost its color, its meaning reduced to a monotonous cycle of survival that no longer held any joy for the grieving queen. Not far away, in the dusty basin of a long, dry riverbed, life continued with an oblivious innocence. The two bunnies explored their world with twitching noses and boundless curiosity. They chased insects and nibbled on sparse roots, their existence a small, vibrant spark against the vast, sleeping landscape. They were entirely unaware of the dark, bruised-looking clouds gathering on the horizon, a silent promise of a violence the parched land had not seen in seasons. Their explorations eventually led them near the resting lioness. A scent, not of predator but of profound stillness, drew them closer. Zala opened one amber eye, her hunter's instinct muted by her sorrow. She saw not a meal, but two tiny heartbeats, fragile and fearless. The bunnies, sensing no threat, paused and watched her back. For a long moment, a silent, impossible truce existed between them, a shared breath in the great, lonely expanse of the savannah. It was a connection that defied all logic. A cool wind finally stirred the oppressive heat, carrying the first scent of rain. The bunnies scurried for the minimal cover of a thorny bush as the first heavy drops began to fall, staining the dust dark. Zala felt the change in the air not as relief, but as a strange premonition. A low rumble echoed, not from her chest, but from the distant sky. What was about to be unleashed would test this fragile, unspoken connection in ways neither could have imagined. The brief moment of connection under the acacia tree was now a distant, sun-drenched memory, obliterated by the present reality. The flash flood, the savage fulfillment of the clouds' dark promise, had transformed the savannah. The roar was no longer a distant rumble, but a physical force that vibrated through the ground, a constant, deafening percussion of water against rock and earth. The bunnies' tiny island of refuge had shrunk to a precarious mound of slick mud, barely wide enough for them to huddle together. The water that lapped at its edges was no longer a gentle caress, but a hungry, pulling force, tearing away soil with every wave. The cold had seeped deep into their tiny bodies, a paralyzing chill that was far more dangerous than the fear itself, draining their strength with every passing second. Inside their trembling frames, a profound exhaustion was setting in, a surrender more potent than their will to live. The frantic energy that had fueled their initial scramble for safety had been consumed by the relentless cold and terror. One of the bunnies, the smaller of the two, let its head droop, its eyes half closed. It no longer had the strength to shiver. The world had become a blur of brown and gray, a chaotic symphony of noise that signaled the end. It felt the warmth of its sibling pressed against it, a final, fading comfort in a world that had turned hostile. Their shared heartbeat, once a frantic drum, was now a slow, faltering rhythm, a tiny candle flame flickering against a hurricane, on the verge of being extinguished forever. From the bank, Zala watched this slow, agonizing fade with an unnerving clarity. Her hunter's eyes missed nothing: the slowing of their breath, the slump of their bodies, the final, weary acceptance of their fate. Each sign of their fading life was a dagger in her own heart, twisting in a wound that had never healed. She saw not prey, but the echo of the helpless stillness that had claimed her own cubs. The flood was a faceless, merciless killer, just like the sickness had been. A wave of profound, suffocating helplessness washed over her, the same emotion that had left her paralyzed in her grief. To watch life be extinguished by the indifferent cruelty of nature was a torment she was being forced to endure all over again, and it was unbearable. High on a nearby ridge, a lone giraffe stood, its long neck a silent watchtower against the bruised sky. It could see the drama unfolding below, the golden predator, the raging water, the two minuscule specks of life about to be erased. But from its position of safety, it was nothing more than a spectator, a powerless observer to the small-scale tragedy. A flock of egrets, disturbed by the flood, circled overhead, their white forms stark against the dark clouds. They too were witnesses, their cries adding to the cacophony but offering no aid. Their presence only served to amplify the intense isolation of the scene, a private battle of life and death being waged while the rest of the world could only watch, unable or unwilling to intervene in nature's brutal calculus. A large, skeletal branch torn from a tree upstream suddenly appeared in the churning water, hurtling toward the bunnies, fragile sanctuary like a battering ram. It struck the edge of the mud island with a sickening thud, shearing off a huge chunk and sending a violent wave over the two small creatures. The force was immense, nearly sweeping them into the torrent. They clung on with the last vestiges of their strength, their claws digging deep into the dissolving earth. The smaller bunny was left half submerged, sputtering, its fur completely plastered to its tiny limp body. It was a final, devastating blow. They had survived the impact, but it was clear to any observer that their time had been reduced from minutes to mere seconds. The sight of that near-fatal blow, of the smaller bunny's struggle to lift its head from the icy water, shattered the last remnants of Zala's paralysis. The agony of her past and the horror of the present converged into a single, undeniable imperative. The ancient laws of predator and prey, of survival of the fittest, dissolved in the face of a more powerful, more primal instinct. Her grief, which had been a shroud of apathy, now ignited into a fire of pure, protective resolve. The risk was immense. The current could sweep even a creature of her power away. But to do nothing was a betrayal of a memory she held sacred. Time was running out. Something had to be done, or all would be lost. It was then that the smaller bunny, half drowned and trembling, let out a final, piercing squeak. It was a sound so thin and sharp it sliced through the deafening roar of the flood and struck a deep, resonant chord within Zala. It was not the sound of prey. It was the sound of a life on the verge of being extinguished, a desperate cry for a mother that would never come. In that single, heartbreaking note, Zala heard the echo of her own lost cubs. The cold, indifferent mask of the predator cracked, and behind it, the raw, wounded heart of the mother was exposed. The amber eyes, once passive, now blazed with a fierce, sudden light. The world of instinct and survival was about to be rewritten by the unerasable ink of memory and loss. The deep, rumbling sigh that escaped her chest was the sound of that internal war reaching its conclusion. The apathy that had shrouded her for weeks was burned away by a sudden, white-hot fire of purpose. She would not stand by and watch helplessly as another small, fragile life was stolen by the indifferent cruelty of the world. The laws of the savannah, written in tooth and claw, became meaningless. A more ancient, more powerful law asserted itself. The profound, unbreakable instinct to protect the helpless. Her grief, once a paralyzing weight, was instantly reforged into a shield. The decision was made, not in her mind, but in the very core of her soul. She would intervene. She would not let them die. With a fluid grace that defied her immense power, Zala rose to her feet. Every muscle in her golden body coiled with newfound tension and absolute resolve. She moved to the edge of the bank, her paws sinking into the soft, saturated earth. The water raged before her, a chaotic, powerful enemy that smelled of mud and destruction. She lowered her head, her whiskers twitching as they read the air, her ears swiveling to pinpoint the bunnies' location amidst the chaos. She was no longer a grieving queen, but a warrior on a mission. The immense risk was plain to see in the violent eddies and the debris hurtling past, but there was no hesitation in her posture. She was calculating, focusing, preparing to wage war against the flood itself. She took a deliberate, powerful step forward, plunging her front leg into the raging torrent. The shock of the frigid, fast-moving water was immense. A physical blow that slammed against her muscular shoulder. The current immediately tried to drag her in, its strength a brutal, insistent pull that would have swept away a lesser creature in an instant. But Zala held her ground, her claws extending to grip the slick riverbed beneath. Her gaze never left the tiny, crumbling island. She was now committed, a golden champion against a brown tide of chaos. But whether her legendary strength would be enough to conquer the river's fury was a question only the next few moments could answer. The world seemed to slow, each raindrop hanging in the air like a suspended jewel. Time itself held its breath as Zala waded into the churning chaos. The water slammed against her with the force of a battering ram, a brutal, cold shock that sought to steal her footing and drag her into the abyss. Every muscle in her powerful legs strained, her claws extending deep into the slick mud of the riverbed to anchor her against the torrent's relentless assault. She was a golden bulwark against the brown fury, her amber eyes locked on the two trembling specks of life. Inside her, the mother's fierce resolve burned away any trace of fear. She felt the river fighting her, but she was fighting for a memory, a force far more powerful than any current. As she drew closer, the tiny island of Earth seemed to shrink even further under the shadow of her immense form. To the bunnies, she was a mountain of golden fur and muscle, the very embodiment of the death their instincts had screamed about their entire lives. They froze completely, their tiny hearts hammering against their ribs in a frantic final rhythm. They could feel the vibrations of her powerful steps through the dissolving ground, a deep, resonant thrum that signaled the end. The smaller bunny squeezed its eyes shut, bracing for the sharp, final pain. It was a terrifying, magnificent sight. The apex predator, having conquered the flood, now stood before them, and there was nowhere left to run. Then the impossible happened. The massive, terrifying head lowered. the scent of rain and wild earth filling their senses. But instead of the flash of teeth they expected, they felt a touch. It was impossibly gentle, a soft, warm pressure from the velvety tip of Zala's nose. The contact was so delicate, so contrary to every law of nature they knew, that it short-circuited their terror, replacing it with a profound, stunned confusion. She nudged the first bunny, a careful questioning gesture, and then the second. There was no aggression, no hint of hunger, only a calm, deliberate tenderness that spoke a language older than predator and prey. In that single, breathtaking moment, they understood they were not being hunted. With the same incredible softness, Zala nudged them again, this time urging them toward the base of her powerful neck. Understanding dawned in their small minds. Hesitantly, the bolder of the two scrambled onto her back, its tiny claws finding purchase in the thick, coarse fur of her mane. The other followed immediately, clinging tightly as they felt the solid warmth of her body beneath them. For Zala, their minuscule weight was a ghost of a memory, a phantom touch that sent a pang of exquisite pain and fierce love through her heart. They were not her cubs, but in that moment her protective instinct made no distinction. They were small, helpless, and they were hers to save from the storm. The journey back was a testament to sheer will. Zala pivoted with immense care, her body now a living shield against the debris-choked current. Each step was a calculated victory against the river's attempt to pull her and her precious cargo under. The bunnies felt the deep, rhythmic power of her muscles working, the steady rise and fall of her breath a reassuring cadence beneath them. They were no longer at the mercy of the flood. They were passengers on an arc of gold and muscle, carried by a force of nature that had chosen compassion over consumption. The roar of the water was still terrifying, but it was muffled by the steady, life-affirming beat of the heart beneath them, a rhythm of pure, unwavering protection. Finally, her paws found the solid ground of the bank. She emerged from the torrent like a creature from myth, water streaming from her drenched coat. She walked a few paces inland before gracefully lowering her head, allowing the two trembling bunnies to scramble off onto the damp, safe earth. A deep, shuddering sigh escaped Zala's chest, a sound of profound relief and exhaustion that sent a plume of mist into the cool air. The bunnies, soaked and shivering but undeniably alive, turned to look up at the colossal figure who had saved them. A silent, unreadable understanding passed between them. What happened next would solidify this miracle, proving that the bonds of the heart are wilder than any law of the savannah. Weeks later, a gentle sun warmed the savannah, which was now carpeted in a vibrant green, a gift from the devastating flood. The scars on the land had begun to heal, and a profound peace settled over the acacia tree where Zala often rested. She lay in a patch of sunlight, her golden coat gleaming, but the heavy apathy that once clouded her gaze was gone. In its place was a serene, watchful alertness. Not far from her massive paws, two young bunnies, now noticeably larger and sleeker, nibbled on tender shoots of grass. They moved with a placid confidence that defied every law of nature. Other animals kept a respectful distance, but these two lived their lives within the orbit of the queen, a silent, unbreakable agreement existing between the predator and the once prey, a testament to the miracle that had unfolded in the raging waters. The bond forged in the heart of the storm had not faded. It had deepened into a quiet, daily ritual. The bunnies, sensing the protective aura that surrounded the lioness, would often forage so close they could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Sometimes, the bolder of the two would hop onto one of her outstretched paws as she dozed, a tiny, living weight that Zala acknowledged with a soft rumble in her chest, a sound not of warning, but of deep, resonant contentment. The raw, gaping wound of her loss had not vanished, but it no longer consumed her. The presence of these two small, fragile lives had become a balm, filling the silence in her heart with a new, unexpected kind of love, proving that healing could come from the most unlikely of sources. Their story became a whispered legend across the plains, a strange and beautiful anomaly that other creatures observed with a mixture of awe and confusion. Zala's act of defiance against her own nature sent a ripple through the established order of the savannah. It was a powerful declaration that the instinct to protect can be more formidable than the instinct to hunt, that the heart's capacity for compassion is not bound by species. Her courage was not in facing down a rival, but in choosing to nurture when the world expected her to destroy. She taught the wild a new lesson, that the greatest strength is not shown through fang and claw, but through the gentle, unwavering resolve to shield the vulnerable from harm, rewriting the brutal laws of survival with the ink of empathy. This unlikely family stands as a breathtaking reminder that the lines we draw between ourselves are illusions. In the quiet moments under the African sky, a lioness watches over two small rabbits, her presence a shield, their trust a gift. Their connection is a pure, unspoken language of the soul, a powerful testament to the idea that love, in its truest form, recognizes no barriers. It is a force of nature all its own, capable of calming the most violent storms, both outside and within. Do you also believe that animals can teach us about love? Share your story in the comments, let us know where you are watching from, and subscribe for more moments that restore your faith in the world.